Welcome to the ProfitMaxx software tutorials. This tutorial series will help you better understand the setup of your ProfitMaxx software and let your service department realize the benefits of proper technician management much quicker. Let's get started.
Chapter 3, Software Setup. If you're going to build a brand new house, the first thing you need to build is the foundation. I don't care if it's a 1,000 square foot house or a 10,000 square foot house. You still need a foundation, and you need a really good one. Because without a really strong foundation, 2, 3, 5, 10 years later, what happens? Well, the house begins to settle and you got some major problems. When it comes to ProfitMaxx, that foundation stone is the setup process. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go through Chapter 3 and we're going to go through in detail the setup of your ProfitMaxx software. As I said earlier, the process of setting up your ProfitMaxx software is critical. And like any other portion of the program, this is offered in 3 different formats. We have the online help screens. Anytime you're looking at a setup screen, I don't care which one it is, and you're confused, simply hit the F1 key and it'll bring up a very detailed help screen to tell you exactly how to fill that in. If you prefer, we have a physical manual that you can go through. Again, it'll show you the screen and have the detailed information below. If you read better and can absorb information better that way, tremendous. And of course, right now you're going through the audio PowerPoint CD tutorials. But in this particular section, because it is so critical, you may want to use a combination of things. You might want to listen to this CD tutorial right now, and then when you're actually going through the setup of the software, look at the physical manual. Or again, if you're going through the physical software, hit the F1 key. It'll bring up all the information you need. In other words, select the learning format that best suits your style of learning. Now, what you have before you now is the opening screen of the ProfitMaxx software program. And you'll notice up in the upper left-hand corner, I've kind of identified and blown up a little thing that looks like 3 different zippers. Well, this is the setup portion of your software. If you'll click on that, it'll enter you into the setup portion of the ProfitMaxx software. Once you've clicked on that little zipper, the first screen you're going to see is the one that's before you. Now let's look at across the top first. It has several different tabs up there. The first one says General. The second one deals with the work week of the company. The third one deals with your employees. The next tab is your location codes. And the last tab up there is called Manager Applied Time. You also notice about 2/3 of the way down the screen, there's also a tab called Service. We're going to go through the five tabs on the top first, and then we're going to come back and look at the service portion of it. So on your opening screen, there's 2 things you can enter in here. The first thing you're going to want to do is type in the name of your company. Why? So that comes out on all the different reports that you both view on the screen and you print out physically. The second thing underneath says Employee Sort under Preferences. In this particular case, you can use the down arrow. If you would like to view your employees by first name and then last name, fine. If you want to view them by last name, first name, that's fine. That's up to you. So those are the first 2 things you need to enter into the setup screen. Our second tab in the setup screen is entitled Work Week. You'll notice the days Monday through Friday are listed. If your company is normally open 8 hours a day, then put 8 hours in each one of those slots. If you're normally open on Saturday a half a day, then put 4 hours there. If you're normally open all day on Saturday, put 8 hours. If you don't open at all on Saturday, then put 0 hours. Then you'll also notice on the bottom right portion of the part that's circled in red, it says Normal Service Hours. What this is going to determine is what hours your technician works in terms of what's considered overtime or after hours work. So if your normal work hours for your techs are 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., then put that in. If it's something different, then put that in as well. The bottom of the Work Week tab deals with the holidays. Now you'll notice when you do your initial setup, it'll have the 6 holidays that are pretty standard for most companies around the country. But it's not unusual to have an extra holiday or an extra day off for whatever purpose as a company. So if you choose to add an additional holiday down there, simply click the Add button, and then you'll notice the arrow takes you up to a little screen that's entitled Holidays. When you click on the down arrow next to the date, it'll show you a calendar. Simply flip through the calendars and click on the date that you have as a holiday for your particular company, and then enter the description down below. It might be Martin Luther King Day, whatever it happens to be. So if you want to add additional holidays, that's the way you do it. The third tab over is called Employees. Now initially when you put that in, there'll be nothing listed, obviously. Now I want to warn you just a little bit here. Be sure you do not, let me say that again, be sure you do not enter your installation crew here. It's real tempting to see the nice timesheet and a nice easy way to track people. Do not put in your installation crew. Put in all your service technicians and then enter in any office and or administrative people that will be part of the ProfitMaxx software process. And what I mean by that is if you've got somebody who's going to do data entry for you, make sure you enter them in. If you've got a service manager, make sure you enter them in. If you're the owner and you're going to look at the information, enter yourself in. So it's strictly the service techs themselves and anyone else in the office who will either have access to the reports or will be putting data into the software itself. Now we're on the Employee tab. It's pretty straightforward. You put in the first name of the employee, you put in the last name of the employee, and then when it comes to department you can use the down arrow. And the down arrow will have listed the service department, administrative, or management, depending on what type of person you're entering in at this point in time. You'll also notice the status will default to active. Keep that in mind because once you put an employee into the program, you cannot take them out. And the reason you can't take them out is if you deleted them, it would mess up all your reporting previously where they were there with your company. So if you have a technician who's been with your company for whatever period of time they leave, all you do is come back to this thing right here, go to the status portion and make them inactive. Now you also notice the next thing in our little red box here says loaded hourly rate. And there's a little pencil right next to it. Anytime you see a pencil anywhere in the ProfitMaxx setup, that's telling you there's a worksheet behind that number that can be filled in order to generate the number that you're looking at. So we're looking at loaded hourly rate. It has a number there, but we're going to click on that little pencil and show you what it means. When you click on that pencil, this loaded hourly rate worksheet pops up. And you put in the basic information. The first thing it says base pay. You put in whatever the employee is earning per hour, and again this will just be for your service technicians. You'll notice under employee paid medical, over to there it says $2, but over to the right it says per hour. Now if you click the down arrow there, you have the option of putting the information there by hour, by week, by month, or by year. So if you know you pay, say, $200 a month for your medical expenses for this employee, then click the down arrow, put monthly, and put $200 over into the medical area. It's the same thing with yearly vacation time. It can be put in as weeks or days. Same with your sick time. It can be hours or days. The clothing allowance, you may have uniforms that you buy for them once a year. How much do you invest per month or per year? Perhaps you have rental uniforms. What portion did the company pay for? Again, put the amount, and again it could be month or it could be week. Your Social Security, that's the matching portion that you pay as an employer. It's 7.65%. It's the same for everyone. Then as you continue on down, enter the workman's compensation that you're paying for that particular employee and your unemployment insurance. And then you'll notice there's two others in there. Sometimes there's other benefits or other costs to your company that aren't listed above. So if you have a unique situation where you need to add some additional expenses in there for that particular employee, just enter them in, and again it can be by week, day, hour, or month, or year. When you've finished entering all the data in there, it's absolutely essential that you click the Apply button. If you don't click Apply, it won't change the number. Again, continuing on the general layout for the employee, the next thing that you see circled in red is your daily revenue goal. This is what should be what we call a stretch goal. There's a certain number you have to have in order to hit your profit margins within your service department. But what we want to do here is we want to set a stretch goal for our technician. That is, we want his goal to be somewhere between 5, 10, or 15% higher than what we really need. Because we're all familiar with the fact that if we shoot for a particular goal up there and we miss it a little bit, we don't want to be in trouble. Well, it's the same situation with your technician. So in our example right here, the daily goal for the tech is $752. But if you work it backwards with a 10% stretch goal, the real goal is somewhere around $675, $680. That's what we really need to hit our department goals. So we stretched it about 10%, and that's our $752. The next tab under Employee says Work Week. Now, if his work week is identical to the company's, then just click the little thing that says Same as Company. But you may be in a unique situation, as some companies are, where maybe you're working 4 10-hour shifts a week. Some people have a standard amount of overtime they charge every single day. Instead of working 8 hours, they work 9 hours every single day. Or sometimes they may work a half a day on Saturday routinely. So if your particular technician has hours that are different than the company's, simply put them into the system right here. The final tab for our employee is entitled Permissions. And you notice there's 3 different permission levels. If you click on None, that means that particular employee has absolutely no access to the system. That would be your technicians. You don't want them in the ProfitMaxx software in any way, shape, or form. So for a standard service tech, you're going to click None. You may be the owner of the company and you want complete access to the system. You want to be able to go in there and change the setup numbers, look at the reports, go through the daily entry, do basically whatever you want to do. If that's the case, then click All. Now you're also going to have a situation where some of your employees you want to have limited access. Someone like a data entry clerk. You may want them putting the data entry in, but you don't want them looking at the reports. You don't want them looking at the general setup. You just want them to be able to enter data, and that's all. So you notice under in the blank area down at the bottom, you simply put in whatever access you want them to have. You click on the ones you want them to have and leave blanks the ones you don't. Also under permissions, you'll notice we have a login name and password and a confirm password. For any of the people to get into the system, they have to have a login name and they have to have a password. So whoever's doing the setup for you, this is where they put the information in. Again, this will give them limited access to the software altogether, and then once they get in, they're going to be limited to the areas that you give them permission to look at. The next general tab in setup is called Location Codes, but before we actually look at that, I want to talk about location codes a little bit. Location codes are a very, very exciting part of the ProfitMaxx software. Location codes will allow you to track geographically things like the number of calls you have, the average travel time, percentage of current customers that already have a maintenance agreement with you, the average ticket price, profitability by area, number of leads. It'll track all kinds of really, really interesting information. So you can see where your profitable areas of town are, and it also help you design and direct your marketing efforts. So we need to give some serious thought in terms of what we set up for location codes for your particular company. Now when it comes to location codes, there's some do's or don'ts, but before we discuss those a little bit, let me just tell you in general, you can make your location codes as detailed or as general as you want them to be. It can be as simple as north, south, east, or west of town. It can be as specific as a neighborhood or a small town that you work in or a burg. It can even go down to a street if you wanted to, although I wouldn't recommend that. But you can make it as detailed as you want to track information on. In terms of do's and don'ts, do not use zip codes. It's very tempting to do that. But the reality is a zip code could be right next to another one, not 50 feet apart. So you really don't want to use zip codes when it comes to setting up your location codes. Create a location code for every area of work in every place that your technician could potentially spend their time. That's not just physical areas of town where they're doing their service work, but it's also the shop. It's also your distributor. It's also gas stations. You want one for the office code. You want distributor codes. You want gas station codes. Any place that your technician could potentially spend time, you want a code for that. Why? I want to know how many times he went to the distributor. Matter of fact, I may want a list of all my distributor locations. So eventually, when I go through the ProfitMaxx software, I can find out, hey, how many times did he go to the distributor? Which one was it? And how long did they spend when they were there? That is really, really interesting information, as well as getting good information from the field about the places that we actually work. Now, in terms of a numbering system, I would suggest you think about it as a code system like you would have on your accounting, different classes. You may want to set the office as a 100 code. Your distributor locations might be 200 series. So the first distributor might be 200, the next distributor might be 210, the next distributor might be 220. If you gas up in one particular place, use that as a location code. You may have 2 or 3 places in town where they can gas up. Actual work locations. That's geographic areas where they actually produce the work. You might want to make that 400 series. In other words, put some thought into your design process because, again, think about the information that's going to come out of this system, and therefore, how do I want to sort things properly so that I get that kind of information 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years down the line. So now we're going to look at the location codes in our setup program. It's the 4th tab over. It's entitled Location Codes. Again, when you begin, there'll be nothing there. This particular example has several in there already. If you click the Add button, you can add a brand new one. If you hit the Edit button, you can change the information that's already in there. So let's go to the Add button. If you click that, we're going to look at the next screen. And as we look at the next screen, we see a little box called Location Code. That pops up when you say Add. We put in the description of the area. And again, it can be a neighborhood, the name of a town, just any way you want to do that. You assign the location code number to it. And there's also a thing called a tracking code, and we're going to touch on tracking codes here in just a moment. And then you'll notice it says Show in List. Right now it says yes. You have the ability to add in a location code for a specific period of time. You can take it out whenever you want to take it out. That can be real handy when you want to do something like a new marketing program. Maybe you're doing a direct mail piece to a particular area of town, and you want to track your progress there for a while, but you don't want it there all the time. So put it in for a period of time. When you're through tracking, you can turn right around, take it off the list, and it won't hamper your overall situation. Now I want to talk about tracking codes a little bit, and probably 95% of the people listening to this presentation or using ProfitMaxx will never ever need tracking codes. However, if you're one of those unique situations, especially in Kentucky or in Ohio, this will be a godsend for you. This is a super thing. Now, let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. I live in Kentucky, and there's a county in Kentucky called Jefferson County. But within that county, we have the city of Louisville, we have the city of Shively, and we have the city of Hirschborn. Now, we have kind of a unique situation here in the sense that when a technician spends time in Louisville, guess what? Louisville wants him to pay taxes when he's in Louisville. But Shively wants him to pay taxes when he's in Shively. And Hirschborn wants him to pay taxes when he's in Hirschborn. So what we have within the ProfitMaxx software is a thing called tracking codes. And we can put a tracking code in, and it will keep account of the number of minutes that each technician worked in all the different areas within those particular cities, and yet they're still in the overall Jefferson County. So if you're in a situation where you need to put tracking codes in and you need to keep that kind of data, this is a really slick part of the system. So again, we're still in the Location Codes tab, but now on the bottom left where the arrow is, you see a little thing called Tracking Codes. And again, you can set up that tracking code for the county, or perhaps you're in one of those situations where your particular company works in more than one state. Tracking codes work well for that as well. So you just click on Tracking Codes. As the arrow says, it takes you to the little tracking code screen. You click on Add, and you simply type in the area that you want to be tracked. And that's as simple as it gets. And then from that point on, whenever you click on the location code or enter that data into the timesheet, it'll automatically pick up the tracking code as well. And keep in mind that your technicians will never see the tracking codes. They don't need to see those. This is simply an administrative situation if you're in one of those places where you need to track the technician's time in terms of where he works. Now the final tab across for the setup is called Manager Applied Time. And the definition of manager applied time is any time that you allow the technician or the service manager allows a technician to do something other than billing out in the field. That can be things like cleaning up the shop, inventorying his truck, going to pick up parts, washing his vehicle. And that code, and you're probably beginning to say, hey, what are all these codes we're hearing about? Well, you'll go through all that when we get into the setup portion on the timesheet. But the action code for manager applied time is A01. So anytime the technician is directed by his manager to do something other than work in the field, he puts in the A01. Now the beauty is we're not just looking at total time that's gone into A01. This gives the manager the ability to break down the time that's applied to his action code. He wants to know, how often did the guy pick up parts? How often did he clean the truck? How much time was he spending there? So this particular part of the setup allows your manager to set up as many as 29 different codes when it comes to their category for AO1. That's beautiful. That lets him track literally anything that he's assigning his technician to. He has the ability to have a drop-down menu for that. Now I realize we haven't looked at data entry yet, but I want to kind of skip over and show you one of those screens, because if a technician puts AO1, which is manager applied time, on his timesheet, when you do the data entry, you'll notice under action code it says AO1 manager applied time, and then underneath that there's a drop-down menu. And it lists everything that you have in there so far in terms of where he could possibly be spending his time. So the technician will note on his timesheet whether he was washing the truck, whether he's picking up parts, what particular thing he was doing. If for some reason the technician writes down AO1 but does not say what he was doing in that process, that defaults to what we call unknown. So if you're the manager and you're looking at a technician's unapplied time, looking at the technician's manager applied time on a report, and he had some time he charged you but he didn't say what it was, it's going to show, hey, we had 45 minutes or 2 hours that I charged my manager, but I didn't tell him what I was doing. Well, if I'm the manager, I'm going to find out what's going on. Now, in terms of the setup, we've been through the initial tabs on top. We've been through the general setup, we've been through the work week, we've been through the employees, we've been through the location codes, we've been through manager applied time, and now we're ready to click on the service button. Now, I just want to remind you again, because it's very, very important, when you're beginning to go through setup on the actual software and you can't remember what kind of information needs to go in there, simply press the F1 key. That's your help key. There is a detailed, I mean really detailed explanation of every single information that needs to be input. So feel free to use that at any point. I don't care if you're looking at a report, hit the F1 key and it'll describe the thing for you. There are excellent, excellent help screens throughout ProfitMaxx. Now let's click on the service portion of it and let's see what we have in there. In the service section of software, we have several different tabs. We have the general tab, we have the charges and times, we have the labor credits, we have SPIFs, we have performance goals, we have SuperTech, we have equipment age, and we have Profit Smart activities. We're going to begin on the initial tab, which is called General. And the first item under General says Vehicle Cost Per Hour. Now you notice there's a little pencil there. Now if you were paying attention earlier, when you see a little pencil, what's that mean? It means there's a worksheet behind it. Now this one is somewhat less important perhaps than other things we've looked at. If you click on the pencil, the little vehicle cost worksheet will pop up that you're looking at on the screen. Now you can literally go through and figure out how many vehicles you've got, what's your lease payments, your insurances on each one of them, your gasoline, your maintenance, and that's all well and good, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. If you want a really, really accurate number, that's the way to do it. But I will let you know that 99 times out of 100, your basic cost of a vehicle per hour is going to run about $5. So again, if you want to go through the detail, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Fill it in, and it'll calculate your vehicle cost per hour. If you don't want to go through that process, simply put in $5. Now, be aware that the only reason we're putting in the cost per vehicle right here is because the only time it's used is when we're looking at the cost of warranty callbacks. So it's a very minor part of the overall profitability and the overall reporting system within ProfitMaxx. But again, if you want the detail, fill it in. If you don't, just put $5 an hour in there. Now the next one underneath that says hourly transfer rate. And this is the value that you assign a technician when he's transferred out of service to some other department. Now this can make some really interesting discussions within the company, because if you're the service manager and you transfer him to somebody else, gee, how much do you want to get for him? Well, if I'm the service manager, I want to get his full hourly street rate. But if I'm the guy receiving the technician to work in another department, hey, I want to pay the minimum amount. I want his basic cost plus maybe some overhead. So a good rule of thumb for your hourly transfer rate, let's assume for a moment your overhead in your service department is 40%. Then take their hourly rate, add 40% to it, and that makes a good transfer rate. The next thing underneath that says department revenue goal. Now remember earlier we said we wanted our technicians to have a stretch goal. Well, this is doing the reverse. This is getting us back to where we really want to be. I believe in the example we used earlier, we said we wanted 10% stretch goal, so we added 10% of what we really needed. In the particular example here, it says 88%, so we put a 12% stretch goal in. So what that's saying is, when I look at the goal that I have for my technician, 88% of that will be sufficient to hit the profit goals within our service department. The next line says expected service calls per day per technician. Traditionally throughout the industry, we're looking at 5 calls a day. But again, depending on the type of industry you're in, depending on the type of work that you do, you may only have 3 calls a day. Other trades may have 6 or 7 calls a day, depending on the type of work that you do. So simply enter in the average number of calls that your technician goes on per day. Then under the overtime underneath that, it says treat Sundays as after hours or overtime. And you'll notice on the after hours multiplier, it's usually 1.5. And holiday hours usually pay time and a half also. So fill in your after hours multiplier, fill in your holiday hours multiplier, and then go up to how you're going to treat Sunday. You treat it like a holiday, or do you treat it like a after hours call? The next tab in our service setup is called Charges and Times. And again, it depends on how you operate your company. The first item under charges says trip charge. Well, if you don't have a trip charge, obviously don't put one in. But if you do have a trip charge, how much is it when you're on straight time? And it's not unusual when you go out after hours to charge a higher rate. If that's your case, then put the rate that you charge when you go out there after hours. Many listening to this presentation and using ProfitMaxx will be on flat rate pricing. So when it comes to the diagnostic fee, put in whatever your diagnostic fee is on straight time. The example here says $68. But when you're on call, the guys are going out there after hours, it's again not unusual to have a higher rate. In this particular example, instead of charging $68, they charge you $109 for the diagnostic fee. If you have any other charges that you have, again, what's your straight time on that, your on call, and then your hourly rate. So for our straight time, perhaps if we're on time and material, I doubt you'd be able to get $160 an hour, but it's possible. But most of the time you're going to be on flat rate pricing if you're up in the $160 range. So my hourly rate for straight time on flat rate pricing is $160. But when you're out there doing overtime calls or on-call work, generally we charge a premium for that. So mark that up, the 20%, 50%, whatever it is right for your particular company. In this example right here, our straight hourly rate is $160. When he's on call, we figure all our repairs at $202.50 per hour. We're still on the Charges and Times tab, but now we're going to the center of the screen that's circled in red called Times. And here we're going to estimate the time that we have for travel, diagnostic, and repair. So the first item on there says average travel time. Now again, these will change depending on whether you're in a big city or rural community. You have to put in what's normal for your particular company. Typically, our travel time for straight time might be 20 or 30 minutes. In our example here, it says 30 minutes. But on call, what's usually happening? Well, usually your technician is having to leave his home, go to wherever the call is. It's going to be longer. Now, it may not be 60 minutes. You have to make the best estimate you can. But in our example, we're going to put 60 minutes for on-call average travel. The diagnostic time, again, that's your guess, but usually it's around 15 to 20 minutes, but that can vary by trade. If I'm a plumber and I'm out there looking at my diagnostic time, it's probably not going to take me more than 5 minutes or so to find out what's going on. If I'm the HVAC business, hey, I'm going to spend anywhere from 15, 20, maybe 25 minutes going through the entire diagnostic survey. So put in what's normal for your particular company. And usually your diagnostic time is the same for straight time as it is for on-call. Your average repair time, however, will change. Usually your straight time, you're going to shoot for billing roughly 60 minutes or so. But again, what's good for your company? But you'll notice in our example, the on-call is a little bit shorter. Now, I wonder why that could happen. Well, when a guy's out there on call, guess what? He's out there to get that thing fixed. He wants to go home because it's 2 o'clock in the morning. He's not going to spend any more time out there than he has to. So generally, your on-call actual repair time is probably a little bit less than you'd have on straight time. Again, the final portion of our Charges and Times tab is down at the bottom. It's called Revenue. The first thing you'll see is expected travel and diagnostic revenue per minute. You notice they have kind of a gray background. That means you don't input anything here. This has been calculated for you based off of the information you put in the charges section, based on the information you put in the time section. Below that, however, it says average parts revenue per hour. This is how many parts that you sell with markup while you're out there doing a repair. Typical in the HVAC industry, at least, is roughly $20, $21 of parts per hour cost, and we usually average a markup of about 100%. So we're looking at $42 an hour for an average in the HVAC industry. On call, again, it's going to be less than that. Why? Because we sell less parts. So we go out and we fix it, and we go home. Now, a lot of people listening to this will be in different trades, so you want to change that $42 to higher or lower, depending on what's normal for your particular company. Okay, we have completed the Charges and Times tab. Now we're moving over to what's called labor credits. The first section under labor credits is called maintenance service calls. And you'll notice the first thing it says is residential maintenance, and it says allocated labor credits per unit. Now that's a critical term, per unit, because when you look at ProfitMaxx, we basically call a motor-bearing unit a unit. For example, if we were going to do a service agreement on a maintenance for a heating and air conditioning company, usually you're going to go out there twice a year. You're going to go out there and work with the air conditioner once a year. You're going to go out there and work with the furnace once a year. When you sold the maintenance agreement, you sold it for one price. However, it had 2 units in there. So when you go out to do the maintenance on the heating and air conditioning system, the heating portion of it is going to be 1 unit, or half whatever the price was to the customer. And the same thing with the time. It's going to be half the amount of time allocated. So in our example here, we were going to sell that overall maintenance agreement for $198 for the year. Per unit, that's going to be $99. And in terms of the time, let's say he goes out there twice a year, takes 3/4 of an hour each time, so per unit, we're looking at 0.7 hours. You'll wind up kind of in the same situation when it comes to commercial maintenance. You may have a situation where you've got a bunch of units to check, but again, move it back to a per unit basis. How much time do you spend and how much you charge them for that particular unit? So if you got a unit price and they have 10 units you're selling, then that'll let you get back to a per unit price. It's the same situation with the commercial filter changes as well. We're still in the labor credits tab, but now we're looking at what we call enhanced service calls. This is another way where ProfitMaxx is fair to your technician, because we're wanting to encourage our technicians to create a sales lead while they're out there. We want to encourage our technicians to sell a maintenance agreement or renew one when they're out there. And yet they have a certain goal in terms of number of dollars that they need to produce every single day. So the complaint from the technician initially was, well, gee, you want me to spend extra time, but I'm not getting any value for that. It doesn't count towards my goal. Well, that's what the enhanced service call is all about. We're going to allow a certain amount of time to create a sales lead. And if you figure that your technician is allowed to spend 20 minutes creating a sales lead while he's on the job, then it's going to take a portion of his hourly rate. 20 minutes out of an hour is what, 1/3 of an hour? So it's going to take 1/3 of whatever your hourly rate is and give him credit for that. So if he's out there on the job and he fills on his timesheet that, hey, I created a sales lead, in the example right here, it's going to give him $45 credit. It's the same situation with your maintenance agreement sold. We're going to allocate 15 minutes for that. If he sells a maintenance agreement while he's on the job, in the example right here, it's going to give him $33.75 against his goal for the day. Same thing with renewal. Usually it takes less time, but he's going to get credit. And all the credits, all the labor credits under there, are based on your hourly rate. What portion of an hour are you spending creating the sales lead, selling the maintenance agreement, or doing a renewal? So again, it's fair to the technician. The next tab under Service Department Setup is called SPIFs. And this is unique to your particular company. Bottom line is you have a SPIF amount per lead for creating a qualified sales lead. The example says $25. Some of you may pay more than that. Some of you pay less. But put in there whatever you give the technician for creating a sales lead. If they sell a maintenance agreement, how much you're going to pay him. Now notice it also says per unit on there. When we're looking at the sale of a maintenance agreement or a maintenance agreement renewal, it's per unit. So again, back to my heating and air conditioning example, if you're going to sell a maintenance agreement, it has 2 units in there. per unit in our example here says $15. So in our example on the screen, when he sells a maintenance agreement, he's going to earn a total of $30 on it, but he's going to get $15 per unit he sold. The next tab under your service department setup is called Performance Goals. Actually, the real thing here is that it's the 24 key performance indicators. And I would probably assume by this point in time, you as a listener have already been through the tutorial on the 24 key performance indicators. If not, you need to go back and review that. So what we have here is on the screen on the left, you'll notice at the bottom it's a little circle 1. It's showing you the key performance indicators for revenue and the key performance indicators for your maintenance portion. If you look at the screen at the right, the little 2 is circled. This continues the key performance indicators for your profitability as well as your labor leverage. The third screen for your performance goals again continues your key KPIs. It's your sales leads, it's your maintenance agreements sold. Now, all those goals, if you'll remember from the KPI tutorial, all those were set up based on viewing over 30,000 service tickets. The numbers are basically pretty good for just about every trade out there. However, you may be in a unique situation either in the trade you're in or the situation you're geographically in that would make some of these just a little bit different for your particular situation. So you'll notice next to every one of the goals there's an edit. And you can click on that, and looking at the one on the screen right now, it says sales leads overall is 12%. Well, if you think for whatever reason yours should be different, just click the edit, put in 10%, put in 14% if you want to. But I would not change those until you have a solid reason for doing it. You've got actual data to prove it by. Until you've got that kind of data, I would stick with the numbers that are originally set up in your performance goals. The next tab under your service department setup says SuperTech. Now, you may or may not have covered the portion where we talk about the SuperTech report. However, when you go through that, you'll notice that of the 24 key performance indicators, when it comes to SuperTech, we're only actually going through 9 of those indicators. In other words, we only put 9 of the 24 on the SuperTech bonus program. And the reason we're doing that is because the technician has 100% control over each one of these areas. Nothing the company does or the customer does can interfere with his numbers. He has 100% control over these. So again, the numbers that are here are pretty well default numbers. They're where you suggest you start. They're just like your KPIs on the other sheet. However, again, if you want to use this as an incentive program for your technician to do things a little bit differently, you have the ability to go in there and edit it and change the number. The next section under SuperTech, circled in red in the bottom, says Other. And it says Points per Attaboy. Attaboys are a beautiful thing. Attaboys needs to become part of the normal culture of your company. In other words, whenever a tech does something that's outstanding, great customer service, stayed afterwards without complaining, had 5 callbacks during the weekend and didn't say anything about it, just went ahead and did his work, you have the ability to reward them. And we call those attaboys. And every time you give them an attaboy, they get a certain number of points. Now you can give them 2 points, 5 points, 10 points, whatever you want it to be. However much importance you want to put on that. It needs to become part of your company language. So in this particular case, where it says points per attaboy, if you give the technician 1 attaboy, he's going to get 5 points for that. Well, that's going to significantly affect his overall point total on the Tech 500 bonus program. And it should. He's doing a great job. We want him to know that, and we want him to get benefit for it. So whatever number of points you want to assign for an attaboy, put those in the system. Under the SuperTech tab, we're now all the way to the bottom where it says Poll Points. This is a unique situation where you can assign extra points when you want to give the technician an incentive to create additional sales leads or to sell additional maintenance agreements. Let's click on the Poll Points and see how that works. Now, as we look at the 3 screens right here, let's look at the far left screen to begin with where it says Poll Points. And from the previous page, we clicked on Poll Points. It brings up the center screen that you see in front of you, and it shows you what's already been sent up. Well, we had a maintenance agreement sold category, and we ran a special situation with the text between July the 1st and July the 31st. If I want to create a specific situation for a specific period of time, on that center screen I'm going to click Add. And when it comes up, it's going to say, okay, here's the pole point detail screen. So what I have the option to do here is to pick a period of time. It can be a day, a week, a month, whatever period of time you want to emphasize sales. In our example, we're going to run this one from July the 1st through the July the 31st. After that, it's no longer valid. And then we're going to hit the down arrow under category. Now I can go through there and I can use this particular pole points for sales leads overall, sales leads on old equipment, or maintenance agreements sold. For my particular example, I used the down arrow and I selected sales leads overall. So now what it's saying is for every 5 sales lead the tech generates, he's going to get an additional 2 points. He's going to get what we call pole points. He still gets the points he would normally get for a sales lead, but for every 5 sales leads he generated, he's going to get an additional 2 points. Now you can make that one-on-one if you want. You really want sales badly, you can say, hey guys, for every sales lead that you bring in for the next 3 days, I'm going to give you 5 extra points for them. I mean, you can use it any way you want, but it's a tremendous way to get your technicians energized over a very selected period of time. And again, when things are slow, you need extra sales, use it for that. So you'll notice once it's been put in, it will list basically your entire history. Every time you've had an incentive program for the technicians, whether it's on generating additional sales leads or selling additional maintenance agreements, it's going to show you your complete history, how often you did it, and for what period of time it was over. The next tab under Service Department Setup is Equipment Age. Now we've got spot for 4 different pieces of equipment, and this is the only part of the timesheet that you as the owner or the manager have the ability to change. And the reason we have the ability to change is because we've got multiple trades using ProfitMaxx. It's used in the HVAC industry, the pool industry, the electrical, the plumbing. Each of those industries has different pieces of equipment that you sell. So you have the ability right here to put in up to 4 different pieces of equipment to track the history on. You'll notice in the first one up here it says gas furnace. What you'll do if you put in gas furnaces is you'll say, okay, what do we consider an old furnace? Now in some markets an old furnace might be 12 years old. If you're out on the coast, that might drop down considerably. What do you consider a new unit? Well, I consider everything in our example 5 years or under as a new unit. So what you'll do is enter what you consider an old piece of equipment. You'll consider the age for a new piece of equipment, and then the system will automatically calculate what your medium age is, which will be between those 2 points. You can put up to 4 different pieces of equipment in here, and those will appear on your timesheet. Our final tab for our service department setup is entitled Profit Smart Activities. And this deals with the close rates on our sales, and it also deals with the amount of the sale itself. Now when it comes to the close ratio, you'll notice the close ratio overall should be 60%. Of all the presentations your salespeople make, 60% of them should close. Close rate on old equipment should be 60% as well. Close rate on medium age equipment, 35%. Close rate on new equipment, again, 35%. Those, again, are pretty much industry averages, but if you're significantly different, you're in a unique situation, you close more or less than that, then put in what's real for your particular company. Now the one that will really change for everybody looking at this program will be the sale amount. You'll notice we have an amount of dollars in there for the overall sales, old equipment, medium, and new. You're obviously going to have different numbers in here if you're a plumber than you are for your HVAC or if you're an electrician. So put in what your average sale amount is for new, medium, and old equipment for your particular situation. The last thing under Profit Smart Activities in the red box at the bottom is entitled Maintenance Agreement Sold, Value of a Customer for Life. Now it may seem a little odd why we're putting the value of a customer for life under the title Maintenance Agreement Sold. What we're talking about here is when you gain a maintenance agreement customer, these are the number of dollars your company is going to really get over the next several years, over the lifetime of that customer. Conversely, when you lose a customer, you've lost those dollars. So what we want to do here is we want to calculate a value of your customer for life. So what you want to do is set up a little worksheet for yourself and say, gee, what's the average life of my customer? How long are they with me? Is that 5, 10, 15, maybe 25 years? What's my maintenance income? If they have a maintenance agreement with my company, what's my maintenance agreement amount? And if they're customer for life for 20 years is 20 times the maintenance agreement income. How many service hours do we have in dollars for a normal year? And how often do we replace major pieces of equipment? Some industries you're going to replace them after 5 years. Some industries it may be 10 or 15 years before you make a major replacement. So what I'd suggest you do is get a pencil and a paper and a calculator and just kind of go through and estimate how much you think a customer is worth for life. When you come up with that value, $15,000 is what we have in our example. That's not far off, but again, it depends on the trade you're in. So do a little math and come up with the best number. Input that in for the value of your customer for life. As we finish up the section on setup, I just want to remind you once again, in terms of learning how to use ProfitMaxx, there's 3 different options for you. You can use the enclosed CD you're listening to right now. That works very well. You also have a manual. The manual can be flipped from page to page to page. Look at the screen, read through it if you learn better that way. And always keep in mind that anytime you're looking at a screen, I don't care if it's a report, an input place, anything in ProfitMaxx, just press the F1 key and it'll bring up a very helpful help screen for you with all the detail you need. So again, utilize whatever format works good for you. Probably when it comes to setup portion of the software, you're probably going to use a combination of the above 3. Hopefully, this tutorial on setup has given you a really good idea in terms of how to put the information in, what numbers you need to be using. Keep in mind, you can replay this tutorial as often as you like. You can stop it, you can go back, you can replay it. Use it to your benefit. Also remember again that you can use the F1 key anytime you view in any screen within ProfitMaxx software for a detailed explanation of what you're viewing. Now, this is the end of the tutorial. Select the next tutorial you wish to review.